Hello there, and welcome to Andre's YouTube vlog for June 10th, 2012. Well, it's graduation season, and one of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately is youth. Youth of individuals and youth culture in general. And I've been thinking a lot about adolescence, that interesting little stage between childhood and adulthood. I read an article on the cover of National Geographic not too long ago, and the story basically was that, and I think it's quite obvious, that a lot of parents with emotionally disturbed teenagers should not put them on medication or antidepressants or try to get them endless and endless counseling to try to bag these feelings, because these kind of emotions, which we would call teen angst or testing limits or whatever, is how teenagers learn to contend and find out what they're made of in the process of becoming an adult. Now, that should be obvious, but I see it happening all the time around me. People have a child who becomes a questioning teenager. They have this attitude that we don't want to kill the messenger anymore. We want to medicate them, to make our lives easier. I suppose was going on a little bit when I was younger too. But I digress. The point of this particular vlog is to talk about my experiences as a teenager growing up in the 1990s. I turned 13 in 1993. My life was very, very interesting at that time. 13, 14, I was really beginning to establish myself as a photographer. I was taking a lot of pictures, experimenting with different mediums. I belonged to a local camera club for the time, but what I generally noticed around me, especially in the mid-90s, 1995 and 96, when I reached high school age, is that a lot of people of my generation who were reaching their teens at that particular point, who were born around the same time I were almost fundamentally obsessed with increasing the amount of anxiety they felt. And, a lot of them were into the gothic, or the emo scenes, as it were. There were a lot of people who liked to dress in black. There was a store called Hot Topics that specialized in that kind of fashion, and, wear skull rings. There was an obsession with occult and darkness. And it was on television. There was an interest in being vampires. There was a very dark and mournful sense during that time. At the time I called it a hangover from the peace and love attitude of the 1960s that their parents, or their aunts and uncles in some cases, might have had. How did I spend that time when I was 15 and 16? Well, if you look in my closet, which is actually a little bit over there, you'll find some of my old clothes. I probably hadn't had a chance to clean them out yet, that I had when I was that age. And you'll notice that a great deal of them are very form-fitting, but they tend to emphasize very bright and almost pastoral kind of colorations. And, at this time, some of the biggest music around was Trent Reznor's Nine Inch Nails, who I've learned to appreciate, or Marilyn Manson, or whatever. But at the time, I can actually tell you right now, what I was listening to a lot was this. What I was listening to a lot in 1996, Stevie Wonder's Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants. And I remember this picture quite well. See that? See that shirt that Stevie's wearing, and the hair and everything? That's more or less how I looked during the late 90s. I wasn't trying to emulate Stevie Wonder, but listening to this album and everything, I guess I just desired a world of my fantasies at that time. And my fantasies were about a place that was very, very romantic in orientation, where people had a very optimistic attitude, where challenges were something to be met with bravery and to be faced with out any kind of ostentatious condescension, which was the attitude of the time. If most people encountered a problem, they would just say, oh yeah, that's real nice, you know, they're polluting the environment or they're ruining the government or whatever. They just responded with sarcasm and move on with their lives and be suicidal. That was not me. I never held to the point of view that the world was sick. And sometimes I did get depressed as a teenager, but only because I felt that my particular generation were moving in a direction where they were psychically numbed to a lot of what was going on. And I saw that as I approached 19 and 20 with the advent of reality television. It was a perfect way to kind of zone out, tune in, and not think. And I'm not putting myself on a pedestal or having an ego trip moment, but I know there are probably a lot of people like me out there who were thinking in terms beyond just indulging themselves and taking advantage of the permission one gets to feel anxiety when they're an adolescent, and thinking about, you know, another world you could create that could be more positive. Now, I'll admit, like with a lot of teenagers, a lot of my views were clouded by naivety and lack of understanding. But I felt I was endlessly resilient and that life was not as short as I thought it was. And that if things did not change soon, we might not have the ability to care about anything, no matter what happened. And I've seen that happen to a degree. And I think if people were able to harness that feeling, that more positive adolescents, and I know they're out there, even to this day, I know they're out there, and use them and put them towards society, I think other generations of adolescents would take that even more so and grow up to become more productive adults. I don't think psychic apathy is good for a teenager, because when you develop that sense, it becomes part of who you are permanently. It never became part of who I am at all. I am analytical, I am questioning, and inevitably very optimistic. And that's the difference, I think, between being a teenager who thinks for themselves and a teenager who only perceives they think for themselves. Everybody who's graduating, have a happy graduation, have a happy summer, and have a happy life. Talk to you next time.